Hello dear children. In this video, we will discuss the first chapter of Civics, Class 10, Power Sharing. An intelligent sharing of power amongst legislature, executive and judiciary is very important to the design of a democracy. In this video, we will discuss the idea of power sharing. We start with two stories from Belgium and Sri Lanka. Both these stories are about how democracies handle demands for power sharing. The stories yield some general conclusion about the need for power sharing in democracy. This video also allows us to discuss various forms of power sharing that we will be taking up in the following video. Now let us look at the meaning of power sharing. Power sharing is a technique to reduce the possibility of conflict between diverse groups, majority and minority. Every social group is given share in administration, government and included in the decision-making process. Dear children, let us try to understand the ethnic composition of Belgium and Sri Lanka and also try to understand how both the countries handle the question of power sharing. Belgium is a small country in Europe, smaller in area than the state of Haryana. The ethnic composition of this small country is very complex. Of the country's total population, 59% lives in the Flemish region and speak Dutch. Another 40% people live in the Wallonia region and speak French. Remaining 1% of the Belgians speak German. Whereas in the capital city, Brussels, 80% people speak French, while 20% are Dutch speaking. The minority French speaking community was relatively rich and powerful. This was resented by the Dutch speaking community, who got the benefits of economic development and education much later. This led to tension between the Dutch-speaking and French-speaking communities during the 1950s and 1960s. The tension between the two communities was more acute in Brussels. Brussels presented a special problem. The Dutch-speaking people constitute a majority in the country but a minority in the capital. Let us compare this to the situation in another country. Sri Lanka is an island nation. Like other nations in the South Asia region, Sri Lanka has a diverse population. The major social groups are the Sinhala speakers, 74%, and the Tamil speakers, 18%. Among Tamils, there are two subgroups. Tamil natives of the country are called Sri Lankan Tamils, which constitute 13% of the population. The rest, whose forefathers came from India as plantation workers during colonial period, are called Indian Tamilians. Sri Lankan Tamils are concentrated in the north and the east of the country. Children, most of the Sinhala speaking people are Buddhists, while most of the Tamils are either Hindus or Muslims. There are about 7% of Christians who are both Tamils or Sinhala speakers. In Sri Lanka, the Sinhala community enjoyed an even bigger majority and could impose its will on the entire country. Now let us look at what happened in both these countries. In Sri Lanka, a democratically elected government adopted a series of majoritarian measures to establish Sinhala supremacy. In 1956, an act was passed to recognize Sinhala as the only official language, thus disregarding Tamil. Secondly, the government followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants for university position and government jobs. Thirdly, a new constitution stipulated that the state shall protect and foster Buddhism. All these government measures, coming one after the other, gradually increased the feeling of alienation among the Sri Lankan Tamils. In 1980s, several political organizations were formed demanding an independent Tamil Elam state in northern and eastern part of Sri Lanka. The distrust between the two communities turned into widespread conflict. It soon turned into a civil war. As a result, thousands of people of both the communities were killed. Many migrated and started living as refugees. The Civil War had caused a terrible setback to the social, cultural, and economic life of the country. Now, let us try to understand the accommodations made in Belgium with regard to power sharing. The Belgian leaders took a different path. They recognized the existence of regional differences and cultural diversities. Between 1970s and 1993, they amended their constitution 4 times so as to work out an arrangement that would enable everyone to live together within the same country. Here are some of the elements of the Belgian model. Number 1, Constitution prescribes that the number of Dutch and French speaking ministers shall be equal in the central government. Some special laws require support of the majority of members from each linguistic groups. Thus, no single community can make decision unilaterally. Secondly, many powers of the central government have been given to the state government of the two regions of the country. Third, Brussels has a separate government in which both the communities have equal representation. And fourth, apart from the central and the state government, there is the third kind of government. This community government is elected by people belonging to one language community, Dutch, French, and German speaking. No matter where they live, this government has the power regarding cultural, educational, and language related issues. So, children, what do we learn from these two stories of Belgium and Sri Lanka? Both are democracies, yet they dealt with the question of power sharing differently. In Belgium, the leaders have realized that the unity of country is possible only by respecting the feelings and interests of different communities and regions. Whereas in Sri Lanka, we understand that if a majority community wants to force its dominance over the others and refuse to share power, it can undermine the unity of the country. So, children, with this, we come to the end of the first part of the chapter, power sharing. In the second part, we will try to understand why is power sharing desirable and the forms of power sharing. Thank you. God bless, and please take care of yourselves.